going. Okay, there it is.
Okay. So he's asking how much we all read. I read the whole, like every page he wrote
Yeah,
to read.
same. I read every page.
Yeah, out of two.
All right. The second question's about how did the Shakers work well economically? So I said I think they were able to work economically because they were able to practice collectivism and they created a society on the basis of common property, which I found on page 52. And I feel like collectivism helped the Shakers gain a lot of power in regards to buying power, gaining trust within their surrounding community, and increasing work opportunities. And then I had one quote, not only could they buy bulk material on the cheap, they were able to invest in expensive but cost-saving improvements that the individual homesteaders could not afford. They could, for instance, build and operate their own sawmills and grist mills, which is on page 54 to 55.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of saying something similar to that, and that they did well economically, mostly because also when they built like their villages, they farmed, and that got them a lot of profit from it.
Yeah, I said something similar, like how they're farming and like how they had like assigned tasks to like everybody, like help the economy like just be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of said like same stuff, like that they're pretty innovative. Like a lot of their like newer technologies were like through them, and like they also had like a community structure. Like everyone was working to the same goal, and that they were pretty self-sufficient. So they didn't need much help from the outside world, and that they also were able to like attract new members because they couldn't like repopulate, but people like their like community style, so
Yeah.
they're able to grow.
Yeah, I had something on structuralism, like how I had a quote that I found. It says their system of communities, and then in quotations, families, or parentheses, sorry, within communities, parentheses, villages, within a single community, parentheses, United States, allowed the Shaker population to expand and contract without much disturbance to their social or economic order, which is on page 63. And I just said that's like what you said. It helped like structurally like organize how their community was. So
Yeah, I have a quote on page 44. It's at the end of the revelation, the Shaker Zion was still makeshift. The believers living on each communal farm began working the land, cooking, and keeping house collectively without articulating a plan. That came later. They began practicing sort of communism, pooling their wealth, raising their children cooperatively, and placing their possessions into a common stock.
yeah,
Yeah, one quote I had, just like kind of about how they profited and how they gained money, was on page 51. It said, "Neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought the prices of the things that were sold and laid them down at the apostles' feet."
yeah, yeah. That's all good. And does anyone else have anything to add on that question? Yeah, I feel like we covered everything.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the second question? It asks, how did the Shaker governance evolve over time? I said that it evolved over time by leadership positions opening up due to the death of formal leaders. And I kind of like went in, like I was talking about how like a lot of people like Mary Ann Lee was the first, it was a prophet-led movement under her. And then when she died, it kind of just kept getting passed down. But it was all male dominance. And then it went to what's the woman's name? Lucy Wright. Um, and then I just said from there it kind of like uh what did I say? Oh, it kind of like went between like both genders and like it seemed like less structuralized. Like I had a quote here saying, after Lucy Wright's death, leadership of the society passed to a group of four elders, two men and two women. on page 74, and I just said it reveals that the new structure promoted equality and represented a less centralized form of leadership that they found to be like feasible.
Yeah, I feel like I mostly said the same thing just after, like, originally after Lee died. Then I think his last name was Whittaker. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But he took over too. And that's when he did the co-partnership with Lucy so that when he died, it went to her. So I feel like that just kind of opened up like letting females also be in charge with them.
Mhm.
And it said, I'm not sure where I wrote it. Oh, but so then after Lucy, or no, before Lucy, Mika was in charge. And it even said how, like, under his leadership, he created a hierarchy where they would govern the millennial church. And then it went to Lucy.
Yeah.
So on, like, kind of just under each of their leaderships, like, a lot of things were done, and there wasn't like one best leader versus another. There was not really much comparison because they all did a lot under their leadership.
Yeah, I'd say like after Ann Lee died, like it kind of just became more like centralized. Especially like towards the end when they grew to like their height. They had like more like regional and like communal leaders, but like they still like maintained their beliefs, even though their governance like adapted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely like promoted equality and like kind of just like it was interesting how it went from like a woman leader to male and then back to like the female aspect. And I had like one other quote. It said, the structure reflected the seats evolving belief that the Godhead, like everything within creation, has both a female and male aspect, which is on page 49. I just feel like ever since then, like the return to female authority was like pretty interesting how that like how they like evolved with that and everything.
Yeah. And even also on 49, um, they said the elevation of Lucy Wright was met with predictable complaints by the Shaker brothers, which is kind of like right when she was announced to take the leadership. Like, she was getting complaints, but then later on, it became more equal when they realized what she did and like how much of an effect she had on the Shaker community.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to add anything? Okay. The last question. Um, oh, like how to compare how they lived as a community rather to how we live with our families as a community. Um, I said something about how when they're in a community, they shared everything. That was said like throughout the whole text. And I just said, I have a quote. For a decade, the believers have been sharing their food, their land, and their money out of a strong sense of solidarity and the necessities of rural separatism, page 50. And I said it's similar to the way my family and I live by us sharing food, shelter, money. So,
Yeah, I feel like, sorry.
No, you got it. You got
Okay. I feel like I said something just very similar about how they shared everything. And I feel like it's the same with my family as well. So they weren't like at the end of it, reading over everything, they weren't as different as most people like might think they are. But I'm trying to find the example. I wrote one thing about how they're different.
yeah. I have one thing about why they're different too, but Connor, do you
Oh,
want to say anything about similarities?
Yeah, I'd just say like what I put down is like shared responsibilities are kind of similar. I mean, not like the same way because they did like everything together, but like at least my family, like if we clean the house or like take care of our dogs. Um, and that like there's still like communal like assets, like the house and stuff like the food that we share. But I'd say like outside of that, it's like mostly differences.
Yeah, I had that too with like the responsibilities. Because they had like very like I don't know, it said something about like the wife having specific responsibilities and the husband having them, and it helped it like move well, which I feel like we could relate to.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to move on to differences?
Yeah. One of the differences that I said was just how they said that when the meeting houses were built, they made sure to like separate the brothers and sisters. I'm pretty sure it was the sisters are like had to stay upstairs and the brothers had to stay downstairs in the house.
Yeah, I had the same thing too. Just like I had like the quote it says, oddly, while the United Society went to great lengths to symbolize, to symbolically separate brothers from sisters, they never took the most obvious precaution, housing men and women separately, page 47. Which is like the same thing you said, like just it was just weird because like they let them live together, but like in public settings, I remember they were saying like they had different areas for them to stand in, which isn't like us, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also say like there's an there's a lot more structure for the Shakers, and that they're like extremely religious. Like that's their whole life. I mean, like the whole chapter goes on like how like religions they're set, like cornerstone. It's not how my family is, at least.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the whole chapter they were like waiting for like a ball to drop or something to happen religious wise and for Christ to come. And even it said that they considered like themselves or when Lee was the first leader, they considered her as the coming like the second coming of Christ, which I feel like most people don't think that about each other or anyone.
Yeah. I had one other thing for differences, related to like their working, like their perspective on labor and all that. I had a quote like they never took a day off, but according to many visitors, life within the villages conveyed a feeling of Sabum calm, which was on page 57. I said this is different because like I feel like a lot of Americans like enjoy days off and like I don't know, I feel like Shakers just seem to not really relax or like they just seemed very structured with like work constantly. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a quote for like the religion part. It's like on page 60. It's like the most obvious expression of the sect's ever increasing fixation on order was their evolving method of worship. It's really solidifies how important that
yeah,
is for.
yeah, for sure. Does anyone have anything else? Okay. And then I just think we have to read the last two paragraphs and then answer those two questions.
I think it might be separate though. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
I don't know.
uh,
We could always just do both. Um, I don't mind.
yeah, yeah, I mean, just pull it up. Um, The Shakers' aversion to the world as they found it and their exuberant millenarian hopes combined to liberate them from any regard for the established forms of human association. Within their villages, they built an entirely new kind of society, one founded upon total equality, spiritual transcendence, and a utopian faith in the perfectibility of life on earth. We are the people who turned the world upside down, and Lee like to say. Ultimately, life within Zion was less about what the Shakers did than about what they didn't do. Namely, just about everything that they might be called worldly. To them, the state of total abstination, what they called being simple, added up to a doctrine of radical freedom from appetite, freedom from nature, from impulse, and perhaps most important, from the conventions of the world. By scorching out the lusty, scaffolding habits of Babylon, The Shakers hope to perfect and liberate their souls and their community. Their best known song celebrates this remarkable paradox. I will bow and be simple. I will bow and be free.
Okay. So do you want to
So
answer questions?
yeah.
Okay. You can go.
Okay. So I feel like the paradox when it says I will bow and be simple, I will bow and be free. I think that the paradox is that they're saying that they're going to bow but then be free when usually if you're like I feel like when I hear the word bow it's like you're bowing to a higher power or to like someone above you. So I feel like that kind of contradicts being free, but I think that in their case they're just speaking on bowing to like Jesus and God and saluting their freedom to him.
Yeah, that was a really good response. Mine, I feel like I didn't really understand much what it meant, but I said that the paradox in the song lyric is that the Shakers feel free by living simplicity. And I said they view simplicity as the state of total absentism, which is on page 77, which allows them to partake in radical freedom, which like allows them to escape from all the disturbances and troubles of life. But it was like what you said, like um being like bowing isn't really necessarily freedom. So I definitely feel like that's a good point.
Um, I feel like the paradox with the lyrics is that like being simple or yeah, being um that yeah, like being free isn't simple. Like freedom's like kind of a complex thing. Like there's so many like different facets of like freedom that I don't think like simple would be a word to describe it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And then the second one, can you think of a time when you felt free by living simply in the Shaker's sense? And then what are you looking forward to post college lives? I said a time I felt free, was when I was like home for the summer after my first year of college. I just felt like very like I wasn't like distracted by anything and I didn't have work for a couple weeks. I was just able to like get back in my own routines at home. And I just said that made me kind of feel like a sense of freedom and like temporarily escapement, like in a sense. And then I said, I might feel free by living simply in my post-college life by having a job like I feel passionate about and taking the time to focus on my career and my personal growth and like feeling like a sense of like fulfillment, accomplishment, like finishing school and like my accomplishments. So I thought that was one of the times I would could feel free by living simply.
Yeah, I feel like I basically said the same thing about when I felt freedom and by living like simply and I said the same thing about the first year after school because there was no work, nothing to do, and I
Mhm.
felt like I could just do whatever I want because there it was just free, like freedom. And post college lives, I said that I'm excited to like live on my own and get into a different routine without it being structured by classes and instead it's structured by work.
Okay. I said like a time I felt free, I guess like when like you're younger, like you don't really have like all these worries. Like your life is pretty simple. You could go to school and then come home, you don't have to worry about like work or something like that. Um, and then I guess I'm looking forward to like have more freedom, not have like to worry about classes and homework, just work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are all good points. Okay, is there anything else anyone wants to talk about? Okay, I'll end the recording. Let me make sure I don't delete it.